It's WG and this is another CZN character showcase. Today's topic is going to be Tresa. We have a combat motion trailer on the official YouTube channel to go alongside of it, and what they do there is show you the animation, show you the flashiness, but what they don't show is how the character's kit works, and that's what I'll be trying to provide to you after. So let's start off with this and give it a look. Always these things are so well done and it's just, they're kind of a vibe, so enjoy.
良くない運が移るかもしれないから私は不幸なのこんな私で大丈夫私の不運は鋭いんだよ苦しみは深まるだけ闇をかき集めて一番の苦痛を不運がどんなものかもうすぐわかるよ終わらない苦しみの中へ全部消えて一人でいるのはもう慣れっこだよ誰も近づいてこない方が楽不幸な人は私だけで十分だから
Short and sweet. So now that you've seen what the character is all about, I'll be trying to give you as much information as possible, though keep in mind these character kits are just very extensive, so it's not that easy to keep it as brief, but I'll be trying my best. So we have the double basic attack as well as a heal, then combined with the first starter card, which creates Shadow Daggers. Shadow Daggers are a key part of what she is all about, in that Shadow Daggers are cards that cost you exactly 0 exhaust, which means the moment you play them they go into your, I guess you could say, discard pile, so you won't be able to get them back on hand if you cycle through all your cards. And then what they do is they apply 2 stacks of agony. So agony is a debuff that at the end of the turn deals fixed damage 50%, and upon taking effect you reduce pain, which is, I guess you could say, a mistranslation, it just stands for agony. So the more agony stacks you have, the more DOT damage you'll be doing. The important part here about that damage over time is that it is true damage. So no matter how high the damage reduction, no matter how high the defense of the enemy, you're always going to do a fixed amount of damage, making her a very, very viable DPS option. And on top of that, and on top of all of this, she is also your first free guaranteed upon 10-star recruit. So if you do a tempo as a beginner, you're then going to be guaranteed to get her in your very first one to kind of, you could say, fill out your squad. So that is the Shadow Daggers, which are the, I guess you could say, main mechanics surrounding her. Then we have Curse, where for one turn when using attack cards you apply agony again, this time another 2 stacks, and then basically instead of the agony just stacking up and up, it like turns into different stacks next to each other that all then tick down by 1 and all do a big instance of damage. Rather than having like 70 instances of agony, you have like 30 instances of 2 stacks of agony, for example. Then we have Shadow Reload, which gives access to another type of dagger, and that is the upgraded Shadow Dagger, which instead of costing 0 costs you 1, has Retain, meaning if you don't play it in the last turn it still stays on your hand, it does not get discarded, and even if you do play it, it does not get exhausted, so it stays in your it stays in your deck rotation and can be pulled the rounds after. Furthermore, you have increased damage, and even more importantly, instead of inflicting with the other one before just 2 agony, you're inflicting 2 agony twice, so 2 stacks of agony to top this whole thing off. And then you have Vital Attack, where you deal damage 80% times 3, and if the target is in agony, meaning it has any amount of agony, you increase the damage by 50%, meaning all of a sudden you're dealing 130% times 3, making this a very viable single target finisher. And then lastly you have Cursed Gouge, which inflicts poison and weakness. Weakness is easy. Weakness reduces the amount of damage dealt for the next 2 turns by 25%, but the other one, and that is poison, is a bit harder. Poison is actually this right here, Pain Imprint, and if you remember, agony actually stands for pain, or pain stands for agony, meaning when agony is gained, you gain additional pain too, meaning whenever you have poison on a unit, that unit takes an additional agony stack I guess an additional 2 agony every time agony is applied, meaning this is what you want to start off your combo with. Apply the poison first, other agonies later to, I guess you could scale into infinity. That then brings us lastly to the ultimate, which really ties this all together very, very well, and that is the ability to create 3 Shadow Daggers, weaken twice, meaning once again the target deals 25% less damage, and then also apply agony 4, so 4 stacks of agony twice, meaning for 4 turns it's going to be agony damage taken, so like 200% DOT, and that is just the ego skill. Next up on the list, yeah, I know it's getting very, very extensive, but that's just how these characters are. We have the Unsheathed Dagger upgrades. We'll try to simplify this, but overall this one, it just reduces the cost. So if you don't have a lot of cost, not a lot of AP, you can go with this one to just get out the Shadow Daggers cheaper, as well as the Shadow Daggers themselves being 0, which means you can pretty much play this card completely for free. Here you just increase the Shadow Dagger amount. In the middle, it's actually a upgrade card, which changes this from a you always play it and get 2 Shadow Daggers to a create 1 Shadow Dagger, and at the start of every single turn you get a Shadow Dagger on hand. Upgrade cards again usually tend to be a very, very reliable option because you don't need to spend additional AP on these effects. Fourth card, create 2 Shadow Daggers, and the created Shadow Dagger has the agony effect increased by 3, meaning you go from a normal agony effect of 2 to agony 5, meaning it would last for 5 turns for that agony to take off. And then you have the exhaust option, meaning you can play this for, like, you could say big burst, in that you create twice the amount of Shadow Daggers, but you're never going to pull this card in the battle again because you've exhausted it. Overall, the middle one, the left one, and also the fourth one do all have their own set of viability, with the second one being kind of in the middle there, and the fifth one usually not being the best for a character that plays in a longer fight scenario, mostly in that you're using DOTs to, you know, get rid of the just get rid of the enemy HP that way. This brings us to Curse. So for 1 turn, when using cards, apply agony to random enemies too. And the interesting part here is that instead of it being attack cards, it's now any card you play, but it is random enemies, meaning that the agony just gets applied to whoever and you can't control it. So if a boss has minions, it could also just hit the minions. The next one would be for 2 turns when using attack cards, apply agony, so allowing you to have a longer time in between getting your next curse or just being able to make more of this. So now for the third version, there's another keyword. I know there's a lot of keywords, but what lead stands for is lead has a 50% chance to reduce the cost of the card by 1 at the start of the turn, meaning there's a 50-50 every time you pull the curse card for it to get reduced to 0 cost. And then inflicting agony 4 times 2 to random enemies is just that, inflicting agony randomly. Then you have the upgrade card in Outbreak of War, meaning you're guaranteed to get it on your hand at the beginning of any fight, where you apply 2 agony to all enemies, and then at the start of the turn apply 2 agony to all enemies, which is a very, very reliable way to apply agony. But then also here you have to upgrade that every time you do apply agony, you apply 2 additional agony, making overall both the curse upgrades big favorites, and then depending on what you're looking for, either number 2 or number 3, with this one not being as useful and more of a lesser upgrade. But overall, all of these are strong, and all of these pretty much synergize in a similar way, you could say, bringing us to Shadow Reload. So Shadow Reload, retain tag, meaning once again you cannot lose the card even if you go into the next turn. 2 cost, meaning you can trigger Celestial cards with that, should that be something, if you for example run her with an Emir. We have the deal damage to all enemies 80%, agony twice, and then exhaust all Shadow Daggers in hand, repeating this instance of dealing 80% damage and applying 2 agony every single time for every single Shadow Dagger in hand. So if you have and save up a bunch of Shadow Daggers on your hand, this card can do a whole bunch of damage, especially combined with the 3 Shadow Daggers from the ult. Then here we have 2 advanced Shadow Daggers, so 2 instances of the 1 cost Shadow Dagger, as well as 100% healing, so just a nice and easy upgrade. And then we have healing times X, create X times 2 Shadow Daggers. What that means is you can, I guess you could say, choose how much cost you want to invest into that card, and the more action points you invest, the more healing you deal and the more shadow daggers you get. So this could, for example, be your whole win condition. And if you, for example, play this card, you have 6 AP, you're going to get 12 shadow daggers, and you can play all of them because all of them are going to be at 0 cost, though I guess hand limit has to be taken into consideration, even though there's way around that. Fourth one is the Outbreak of War, once again at the beginning of your round on you. And then when healed by a skill card, create 1 Shadow Dagger is again a upgrade card. So there's a lot of upgrade cards you can have here that just naturally create Shadow Daggers depending on how you play it. And then you're going to have a bunch of Shadow cards or Shadow Daggers that you can all play for free that give you a bunch of agony, with once again more of like a ultimate type of deal where you discard all cards and then get Shadow Daggers equal to that number, but again exhaust, meaning it is gone after. So the exhaust is going to be the least of the priorities. Then you have the Outbreak of War being pretty nice, but also a bit more niche because you do have to get healed by a card, with this one in the middle having huge potential to do huge amounts of damage, especially if you're unlucky on your draws. And then overall this attack here and those also being nice, but not as special, I guess you could say. So this brings us to the last set of epiphanies, and that is for Vital Attack. So for Vital Attack we either have a simple straight up cost reduction, or we have a simple straight up damage increase, so pretty straightforward. Then here we still deal the same amount of damage, but for 1 turn you increase the damage that Agony itself deals, which is particularly useful in turns where you've just built up a bunch of Agony. And it's just going to tick down for 100% instead of just 50%, which then again still is true damage, meaning no matter how high the enemy's defense, it is always going to go through. Vital Attack 4 is then increasing the damage to 200%, but only 2 hits, and if a target's agony count is bigger than 3, then you can trigger it 1 more time, meaning you're going to be doing a grand total of 800% damage, which is quite a lot, with then the last one being 450% damage and increasing that damage by 10% per target's agony. So the number 5 and the number 4 have the biggest, you could say, scaling potential, where the one in the middle is the best for high defense fights, and these ones are just simple and straight upgrades, like for example if you want to make her work with a ray, which just naturally increases the damage of 1 cost cards, or if you just want to straight up upgrade to a very solid card. So now that we have all these fantastic epiphanies out of the way, there's only a couple things left to talk about, and that is this is going to be your character's potential, where your basic dagger throw now also inflicts agony. You should already be able to see the synergy here. This brings us to Cost Gouge, and you might be wondering, oh, why is it the same image as you've seen before? That is because during the closed beta test I did get her multiple times, but before this it did have the poison and weakness, but just at less turns. Bringing us all the way to the A2, which is the Awakening Memory. When using the Shadow Dagger card on a target with Agony, you just naturally deal 20% more damage. Does not affect the Agony damage, so it's just a straight up damage boost every time you've already applied Agony to a target. Then right here we have the A4. Again, the A3 just increases all card damage on a character by 6%. Here we have creating 3 Shadow Daggers, weaken 2, and then Agony for 6 turns twice. So you're pretty much just increasing the amount of agony you're applying, which then scales with all her other effects, as you should have noticed. And then here the A6, with again the A5 providing the 6% card bonus. The A6, when defeating an enemy with agony, you just create a Shadow Dagger, which can be incredibly useful in bosses with just enemies on the field, or just you could say AoE stages in general, allowing you to just cycle and continue the killing. Alright, now for the synergy part, yes, you probably don't know what most of these do, but I give you a brief overview of those, and obviously in the coming days you get a closer look at them. We have Nia. Nia has the ability to play cards for free off the top of your deck, or play cards for free out of your graveyard, which synergizes really well with her and giving her the ability to apply even more agony. Ray has the ability to boost the damage of 1-cost cards, where she has plenty of, even though her standard Shadow Daggers are 0 cost. So it's a bit harder to synergize, but you can make it work really well. Cassius has the ability to just fish for that perfect card that you need to make your TRESSA, your TRESSA combos work. Mika overall is a unit that can give you a lot of AP, so a lot of action points, a lot of abilities to just generate points and also carry over action points from the last turn, which allows you to just build up to these big agony burst turns, as well as also use the X Epiphany card to a greater effect with more AP at your back and call. And then lastly we have Orleia, who has a card that is specifically made for dealing more damage the more cards you have in hand, and with Tresa having the ability to generate all these extra cards out of a lesser card, for example using the Shadow Dagger reload, going from a 1 card into 3 different ones, that synergizes very well, as well as Orleia also being, you could say at the moment, the only 5-star support. She does provide the shielding, the healing and also an extra damage boost. So that's all you need to know about Tresa. I hope I was able to cut it down as a little more this time, and we see each other in the next one. Peace!